It was a calm night at the shore, with the clock nearing 11:49 p.m. James, standing alone by the sea, was lost in a conversation on his phone. The soft rustling of the waves and the distant cry of seagulls created a tranquil, almost hypnotic atmosphere. But as he glanced around, something caught his eye, a faint shadow moving along the shore. At first, he shrugged it off, assuming it was just his imagination or perhaps a distant animal. He continued to pace, distracted by the phone call. Suddenly, the wind picked up. It wasn't a gentle breeze but a gust so strong that it sent chills down his spine. There was something unsettling in the air. James paused, sensing a strange presence behind him. Slowly, he turned around. A dark, looming figure stood motionless, just out of reach. His heart skipped a beat. Shocked and unable to process what he was seeing, James instinctively moved. His feet carried him away in a hurried, frantic manner. He found a nearby bench and sat down, gasping for air, his mind racing. He grabbed his phone again, desperate to call Mike, his closest friend. But his screen displayed no signal. No matter how many times he tried, the call wouldn't go through. In the distance, a lighthouse, one he hadn't noticed earlier, now loomed large, its light cutting through the thickening fog. For a moment, it felt like a beacon of hope. Distracted, James decided to move, thinking he could find safety there. But just as he gathered his strength, a soft, sweet melody filled the air. The voice was delicate and haunting, like a lullaby meant to lure him in. Almost against his will, James found himself walking toward the sound, his feet moving unconsciously. When the melody stopped, James snapped back to his senses. He found himself standing at the base of the lighthouse. His heart pounded in his chest. The eerie silence and the cold, damp air pressed down on him. Panic surged through his body. But with the storm brewing, the wind howling, and the rain now beginning to pour, he had no choice. There was no escape. He pushed open the heavy door of the lighthouse and stepped inside. The air was thick with darkness, and the musty scent of age filled the narrow space. His flashlight barely pierced the black void. As he explored the lower levels, hoping to find a way out, a burst of sinister laughter echoed around him. Startled, James spun around, his flashlight catching the faint outline of a girl, her figure darting up the spiraling staircase. Without thinking, James followed her. The laughter grew louder, more maniacal with every step he took. His breath came in ragged gasps as he reached the top of the stairs, the lighthouse's terrace. There, illuminated by the flickering light of the beacon, the girl stood still, her face pale, her eyes hollow. Before James could utter a word, she turned to him, and in a flash, she leaped from the terrace. Time seemed to stop. James was frozen in disbelief. Did he just witness someone jump to their death? He rushed down the stairs, hoping, praying, that it wasn't real. But as soon as he reached the bottom, the same laughter returned. The girl appeared again, running up the stairs, laughing louder than before. The loop continued, like a twisted nightmare from which James couldn't wake. Frustrated and terrified, James screamed into the empty lighthouse. The eerie laughter was the only response. Desperate, he began searching for clues, anything that could explain what was happening. In a dusty corner, he found an old book, its pages yellowed and worn. As he flipped through, he discovered stories of people just like him, who had encountered the mysterious lighthouse. One name stood out, Rebecca. She was a 24-year-old woman from a nearby colony, living in 2009. Heartbroken and abandoned by her lover, Rebecca had wandered to the shore, much like James. The lighthouse had drawn her in, and like him, she had become trapped, doomed to relive her torment. Unable to escape, she had leaped from the terrace in desperation, but even death didn't free her. Her soul was trapped, forever bound to the lighthouse. James's blood ran cold as he turned the page and saw his own face staring back at him. His story was written in the book, the events of the night, his every move already chronicled. Panic set in. He threw the book across the room, desperately trying to convince himself it was all a nightmare. But as he stumbled backward, the truth settled in. This wasn't a dream. The only way out, it seemed, was to do what Rebecca had done. With no other option, James climbed the staircase one last time. The wind roared around him, the storm now in full force. Standing on the terrace, he looked down. His mind raced, fear and resignation battling within him. Then, without another thought, he jumped. As his body fell, the wind seemed to carry a sigh of relief. Rebecca's soul was finally free, her torment over. But for James, the cycle had just begun. He found himself back in the lighthouse, his soul now tethered to the cursed place. The laughter had stopped, but the silence was far more terrifying. The lighthouse had claimed its next victim. Far away, on the shore, Mike was calling out for his friend, searching in vain. He stood at the water's edge, crying into the night. That's when he heard it, a sweet, melodic voice, drifting on the wind. And then, like James before him, he noticed a distant light, flickering from the top of a mysterious lighthouse he hadn't seen before.